Hello, you viewers, and welcome to Novus Talks with me, your host, Novus Corvius. And we have some bad news regarding a potential sequel to Metroid Dread. And I bring this up because it's been revealed MercurySteam is currently working on a brand new IP in partnership with another studio that has no relationship to Nintendo. Now, you may be wondering, okay, what's so bad about this? What's the issue here? And simple is just this shows that MercurySteam has moved on from Metroid for the time being. What this shows is that their current focus and attention is elsewhere. Now, this isn't a bad thing. I mean, when you think about it, they've done two Metroid games back to back. Each took like 3 or 4 years of development, so it's no wonder that they want to move on to something else so they don't get fatigued and tired with the franchise. The same thing happened with Retro Studios with Metroid Prime. When they developed Metroid Prime 1 and 2, they initially wanted to move on to something else, but Miyamoto kind of pressured them into jumping straight on to Metroid Prime 3, and so that's why we got Prime 3 so quickly. And I think it's a similar situation here. I think MercurySteam just want a break from Metroid so they can move on to something else. Now, the reason I say this is bad news is because we could be waiting a very long time for Metroid 6. Because as I also brought up in a previous video, we found out that Metroid Dread went through some very rough development. MercurySteam wasn't treating its employees right, some of them weren't getting paid, a lot of them weren't getting credited, large amounts of content were cut from the game, all these sort of things. And as you might remember, I theorized in that video that Nintendo probably won't work with MercurySteam again. I mentioned that Nintendo would either completely jump ship and move 2D Metroid to a brand new developer, or some people theorized maybe Nintendo would buy out MercurySteam, but I never believed that was an option. And this kind of leans into the fact that maybe they're not going to be working with Nintendo anymore. Or maybe it's just that their attention is focusing elsewhere. I don't know. But the fact is, if they are still going to be working with Nintendo, Metroid 6 is not going to be coming for a long time. And if they're not working with Nintendo anymore, Metroid 6 is still going to take a while to come because Nintendo's going to need to find that new developer. That new developer is going to need to brainstorm ideas, new engines, stuff like that. So we could be looking at, I want to say, at least 5 to 10 years before another 2D mainline Metroid game comes out. And I mean, this is nothing new. We waited 15 years for Metroid Dread and 8 years for Metroid Fusion. So this is nothing new to us. And the wait is going to be a bit easier this time because we have Metroid Prime 4 coming out in the next 2 years. Probably Metroid Prime Trilogy, and who knows, maybe some other stuff as well. But the fact of the matter is, we're not going to get any follow-up to Metroid Dread anytime soon. Now, it could be a case that maybe Nintendo figured they've finished the story and they'd want to move to a new developer to brainstorm new ideas and come up with something completely brand new for the series. So maybe going with MercurySteam for Metroid 6 was never going to be an option. You know, a lot of us theorized after Samus Returns that if MercurySteam were to make another Metroid game, they would probably become the main developer for Metroid games going forward. But I don't know. The thing is, this news could mean absolutely nothing. It could literally be as simple as they just want a break to focus on something else. See, we don't know how long in development they are with this new game. They could have just started, or they could already be finished. Who knows? Or maybe they're working on Metroid 6 alongside this. But for argument's sake, let's just say they just started this new game and it takes 3 to 4 years to come out. Then they're going to take another 2 to 3 years to make a Metroid game. And at that point, like, it'll be like within the first 2 years of the next generation Nintendo console before we see a new 2D Metroid. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's much more preferable that we'd have to wait then as opposed to having to wait 20 years. But at the same time, it's unfortunate because I had hoped that given the release and success of Metroid Dread, we would start to see Metroid games become frequent. Mainline entries would start coming out very quickly in succession, one after another. It doesn't have to be every year. I'm fine with one every 2 years, but it's the fact that we're still going to be potentially waiting 5 years between games is still, that bothers me greatly, because I kind of view that as unacceptable. As we found out when all those employees started mentioning about the abuse of MercurySteam, it was mentioned they were working on another game alongside Metroid Dread. And I guess that game is whatever this new IP is. So they can work on multiple projects at once. So maybe they are brainstorming another Metroid right now. After all, Sakamoto did say at E3 that he knows where he wants the franchise to go next. But given the ending of Metroid Dread, you'd wonder how much of that was true and how much of that was just sort of PR, because Metroid Dread doesn't end in any way that sets up a new game. Its ending is vague and doesn't really offer any clues or conclusion or anything of that sort. So I feel like he was just kind of playing up to the cameras there for that. But even still, if MercurySteam are working on multiple projects at once, they could be working on Metroid 6 alongside whatever this new game is. And the problem then is that if their resources are stretched thin, that game could still take a long while. It wouldn't be their priority, and the quality of the game could suffer because most of their staff could be focusing on their next major project. Whereas Metroid 6 could be something that's kind of viewed as, hey, we don't need to get this out as quickly. So I guess basically the crux of all of this is, a lot of it's just me overthinking things, I suppose, but Metroid 6 is not coming anytime soon, at least not till the 2030s. And so, I mean, maybe it's because MercurySteam is working on DLC for Metroid Dread. I didn't mention that earlier, but that is a possibility. Maybe they're working on DLC for Dread, and while that would be cool, at the same time, that means we're still going to be waiting longer for Metroid 6. So there's no outcome here where we see Metroid 6 in any time in the near future. And so it's not like there's a need for it either. I mean, I recognize the fact that Dread was a huge success. It didn't end on a cliffhanger or anything, so there's not a massive need to shoehorn another one out. But at the same time, I had such high hopes for the series to start moving along quickly and we could kickstart the new story arc, but I guess that's not happening for another while. Who knows? But let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. What do you think of all of this? Do you think MercurySteam will no longer be working with Nintendo on Metroid? Do you think it's just a case that they're fatigued with Metroid and wanted to work on something else? Do you think Nintendo's looking at other developers? Do you think they're working on Metroid 6 already? When do you think we could even see a Metroid 6? I want to hear everything you have to say down in the comment section below. And yeah, with that all said, thank you all for watching and please subscribe. Novus Corvius out.